Hello cosplay world, we are beginning a full set of Gilgamesh armor. Now in the first one here we're going to be going over the prop because it's kind of the easiest bite-sized bit to go over, and then we're going to be moving on to the plates and armor bits and legs, and you guys get that over at finalcosplaycore.com. Now half of the videos are going to be available on YouTube, but the full listing is over on the website for my wonderful supporters. Also there's pictures and things like that if you want to look at details and figure things out more, ask questions, all those wonderful things that are available there. Okay, I do try and space out these videos because I know that they can eat up like a month. But this isn't too bad because this is only going to be 2 weeks on YouTube. It's a kind of weird balancing act where I need to put enough details where the tutorial is useful, but I don't want it to be long and unnecessarily complicated and bring up details that you probably already know or can figure out or into and things like that. So to start, we're working with PVC Foam Sheeting. If you see me, you've seen me use this a bunch of times for a bunch of work. And the great thing about it is that it's thermoformable and it will hold shape. It'll act a lot like plate armor because it's very rigid by comparison to other thermoformable materials. The difficult thing that you run into with this particular prop, and what's going to be around 60-ish% of the work here, is actually shaping and forming this one particular piece of plastic. The idea here is we want a cone, and cones are kind of a pain in the butt to make. Typically I see this prop made where it's just a cardboard tube and it doesn't have that nice conical shape that is part of the design. So I spent actually quite a lot of time refining and fixing and making sure that the piece is smooth overall. And it's a slow process. It's something that is going to take a bit of patience because we're not going to get it all in one go, and it's not going to be uniform from the start. We're going to need to slowly hone it into the shape we're looking for, especially when we have such a large piece of plastic. Typically with a heat gun, we can only get so much of the material heated up at once before we have to kind of move on. One trick I'm using here is I'm heating up the entire surface on the inside by making a channel. So I'm forcing all the air, the warm air, into that channel, and it's heating up the surface and not necessarily melting it. It's allowing us to make it more pliable and even out all those little blemishes and bumps and things like that. Okay, so the next thing to do is the handle or the grip, and we have a few details here I'm going to be cutting out with the hot knife here with the PVC pipe, and the bit of Instamorph there, or friendly plastic, is going to be just a bead that's going to be in the handle. And I've chosen to make it entirely out of that because it was just the most simple thing that I had on hand. I might have been able to get like a wood bead, but I wanted to make sure that it fit properly, so I made a custom sized bead, and I didn't want it like slipping through and doing stuff. Also because it's sticky when it's nice and warm, it made installing it pretty easy. Now the detail at the base is me simply flattening and rounding the PVC pipe, and we're going to go in and smooth it out and put some plastic filler or some kind of smoothing agent to make that look much nicer once we do paint it. Now attaching the handle to the to the cone is going to be an issue. Attaching it directly to the center is going to be kind of a pain in the butt. Because the PVC pipe isn't necessarily big, and we don't want a gigantic PVC pipe in there because it'll make it heavy. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to make it off center, creating like a Z shape with the PVC pipe, and then mounting it onto the plastic with some screws there. Now the tip is got a few strips of PVC sheeting like we were using before, but they're smaller and they're just rectangles that I glued and mounted to the tip. This prop doesn't have a good place to kind of lay it down. Typically I like to put someplace on the butt of the sword or on the tip of the sword, weapon or prop, whatever the case may be, where you can place it and safely keep it where you don't need to hold it. I think the safest way to store this prop is just straight up on its side, because you have that detail on the tip. The base is solid PVC pipe, so it will take a bit more damage, but it's not exactly a stable shape because it has the curve to it and things like that. So this is a kind of pain in the butt prop to own. So yeah, you've seen that we've rounded and smoothed out that edge, and we're going to further finish it as we move on to later stages in the production. Another trick is to kind of try and hide it as best you can. So now we have the handle on. The other trick I use to mount the the handle in place is I put a plate on the base of the cone and put a hole in that plate, securing the handle in place, making sure that it has no place to kind of wiggle around. You can also do something like add some foam to the inside, fill the inside with foam, thus making sure that the cavity is filled and decreases a bit more of the wiggle room. Now the guard, I'm going to call it in quotation marks, has a bit of detail on it here, and we're again making it out of PVC foam sheeting. And you can see I'm using my dovetail saw to get the straight lines or some of the gradual curves, and then I went in with the hot knife to get the details because it just gets into those smaller details so easily. If you've seen me work with plastic, this is very, very clear evidence of me taking just a few seconds to just cut out these little triangles of details, and rather than going to, say, a drill press or a drill saw or a chisel or a box cutter, the hot knife makes such easy work of this particular material. And here we are layering over the pieces because I don't want to displace the details. I'm adding them to the piece first and then heating and stretching them later, because if I try and add them layer by layer, at least in the main plated sections, then the circumference difference is going to make that a problem, and it's going to be not exactly shaped right. Now you can compensate for this by making the top layers slightly bigger, but I don't want to do that math. Basically, I just don't want to do that math. And what I'm going to do is glue them to the surface, and then since they're on the surface, they'll stretch in the same proportions as the piece underneath it. Whoa, solution! Now, bear in mind, this gets more and more prevalent the more layers we get on. So that top layer of detail definitely had to be made much bigger overall, rather than having to deal with each individual part. Now, for the details that go along the cone of the lance, I could use basically any kind of material for these stripes. I chose Warbler because it was convenient, and it might have been like 2 o'clock in the morning. I was tired. But it's as simple as attaching some rectangular bits and painting them on. Luckily for our base cone, it's black. And black hides so much imperfections that it makes finishing much easier. So when I go in and sand it and fill those cracks and things like that, it makes for a much easier time. If I were doing something like a yellow or a red or a bright color, those show detail much more prevalently. Additionally, things like metallics or reflective materials also show that detail much more. But since we have that brilliant contrast of the red and the gold, boy, is it super not noticeable compared to that. Oh, also, the gold here, you can see this on the base and the handle. That was just regular spray paint I did out off camera because I didn't really have a good place to videotape. Actually, I still don't have a good place to record me spray painting, just because it requires such a large area, and typically those areas aren't very well lit, or they're full of crap. So the last thing to do are these details on the guard, and I'm just going to take my time and do 2 layers of blue to make sure that we have an even coat. Finally, finishing the entire piece off with a bit of polyurethane spray to give it a bit more of a coating. If you want to go with a heavy varnish, that's probably fine. I think I went with a polyurethane spray because of these spray painted elements. I also did a bit of sand. Well, I did that before, but a large portion of this is just kind of getting the detail done on the sword itself. Now with the reds, that's 2 layers or 3 layers typically, and that's about it. Next time around, we're going to start the actual armor. Hope you guys check that out at finalcosplay.com. Bye! If you think this is a lot of videos here on YouTube, you should check out finalcosmiccore.com. There's at least twice as many videos, extended versions, walkthroughs, photographs, just a ton of stuff. I hope you guys check it out. Good times to all. Rah!